for me, don't pray for me.
Beautiful voice, hey? It's fantastic. How are you, mate? Yeah, lovely to have a chat to you. Yeah, this is it Ollie or Oliver? What do you prefer?
Yeah, well, my mum would say it's Oliver, but I can, but everyone calls me Ollie. That's fine.
Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah, I'm yeah, very keen to have a chat about the new EP and generally about the band. The first thing I wanted to ask you was how's Wade? Because I heard about the accident, yeah,
Yeah.
just prior to the Avatar gig. That must have been a bummer. But the main thing is if he's all right. How's he going?
Yeah, mate, absolutely. It was like the day, or not even, I think it was 24, 48 hours before the show. It just came out of the blue. Obviously, you don't plan these things, but uh, it's been 2 weeks now, I think, and he's had his second follow-up. It's healing well. He hasn't needed surgery, which is the main thing, because that means you're out for a long time if you've got to have some bolts and things put in there. So. We're hoping it's not going to affect any of the rest of the touring plans we've got booked in for the rest of the year. So he's on the mend. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, yeah. I had a mate of mine in a Melbourne band, and he wasn't actually skating. He was at a skateboard ramp, and he fell on his elbow, and he actually destroyed his elbow. And he's a guitarist, and he's 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 literally part cyborg. You know, like just the X-ray of it. Yeah, and luckily but exactly what he said, and that was like 3 months before he was back in the. So I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear that. Yeah.
We're hoping for 6 weeks. It hasn't been a major, yeah, as I said, no surgery and that. So we've got a couple of shows we haven't announced yet, which I think we just need one more approval on, and then we can say, look, we can still do them. But we've definitely got one in November, which we're all steam ahead for.
Excellent. Oh, that's good to hear. Now, I certainly want to chat about the new EP that comes out in a couple of weeks. Obviously, the follow up to As Above, So Below, As Within, So Without, the mouthful. Want to definitely chat about that. But I first wanted to sort of do a bit of a history lesson on the band because you've been around, I think, around about close to 16 years now. My records, and it varied what I could find on the internet, even though I know your releases. I think it's 3 full lengths, and I think the new EP is number 3. Is that right? EP, yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think that's it.
yeah, cool. That's good. So yeah, so what's just a bit of the background about how the band got together and all those sort of things? I think that's pretty important because you've been around for a while.
Yeah, I think and you're right there. There's discrepancies around when we actually started and when things came out, even between us in the band. So, good luck finding the exact information on that. But
Yeah.
I think the year we kind of consider it all really kicking off was around 2010 when we went over to LA and relocated for 3 months and recorded our first record with Christian Old Walbers, who was just of Fear Factory at the time. And then yeah, we put that album out as soon as we got back. So that's kind of where we kind of consider the start there. Obviously, we've been kicking around doing a few things before that, but that was really when we came into our own. Yeah, so that was probably the big one for us. And then we did a lot of touring. We toured that all over Australia and New Zealand several times. Yeah, and then we put out an EP, Wolves of Perigord,
Mm.
which did quite well for us. I think it hit number 2 on the metal iTunes charts at the time, which we were pretty excited about. So that was good. And then we got picked up by a label in the States, Eclipse Records in New York, and they loved the 2 records we had out, so they wanted to do a North American exclusive. So they kind of combined the 2 records together. So some of the
Ah,
best of the EP and the best of the LP, and they called that one Pariah in the States. So yeah, that was the one after that. And then we did a remix album where we got lots of our friends that we knew or some people that we didn't, but we approached some big names on that, which was cool because we do also like that electronic industrial side of things as well as our metal. Um, but yeah, more recently it's the 2 EPs, As Above, So Below, and now very shortly, as within, so without. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty. And I definitely want to touch on a few things there about You've had some fantastic associations and people involved, and yeah, it's been pretty intense, really, where it's come to up to now. So I suppose the first thing is when you were talking about Christian, who produced that first album. I mean, pretty big shoes, Fear Factory. He was also in. I read about Power Flow. He was in that, and what I was really surprised, Beowulf as well, which is like one of the around the time of Suicidal Tendencies and Mike Muir's label. Like that was amazing. That was a fact that I didn't know, and I love that band as well. But how is it? How did that happen? The linkage, and because it's obviously an amazing find. Because I think he was in Fear Factory for nearly 30 years or something. I think close to, yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking, as I said, late 2000s. So we're talking the end of kind of the MySpace age. So believe it or not, one of the guys in the band literally just sent him a MySpace message checking out our band, and he's like, and he was just like, I really dig it. And he was producing at the time. He'd just done Threat Signal, some God Forbid stuff. He'd done a couple other things. So he was moving into that territory, I guess, for his career. And he said, look, I can make it happen. This is what you need to do to get here. I'll put you up. He put us up for a couple of months in his house, which is great. We did spend some time in hotels, but the majority of it, we actually lived with the guy, which was intense. Can you imagine like a room full of young kids, basically from Australia, just tearing it up? So, but yeah, so it was honestly, we just reached out and threw that Hail Mary, and he listened to the music because it was up there, and he really dug it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I mean, it's a huge sounding release. It is, like, even now, even though I think it's at least, that was 2010, 2011?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's quite a while, but
Yeah.
it still sounds really good. Like, it's just, yeah, because some things can definitely change over that time. And some of your other connections you touched on, which I really love as well, the remix album that had some amazing people on that, and definitely touching more on the industrial, but definitely the electronic and the beat stuff as well. Almost the dance thing, which is kind of like the Fear Factory remix one, which we all love, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that we've got a couple of parallels to Fear Factory in our career, I think, and that's funny that we ended up working with someone from that band. But I guess when you throw out the industrial metal tag, that's the first band that comes to a lot of people's minds. That and Ministry et al, and obviously Godflesh. I can see you're
yes,
representing
huge fan,
right
yeah.
there. Beautiful. Yeah, big fan. So. Yeah, that was great. So as I said, we had a lot of friends in the local scene who were on there who were DJs and electronic artists that we knew who jumped on, and we also had a couple of friends in higher places, so to speak, that we knew at the time. We had our guitarist Biz. He joined, and he just moved over from Florida in the States, and he'd been in Genitorturers, which was
yes.
Dave Vincent from Morbid Angel was in that at the same time as he was in it, and it's Dave's wife Jen who is the leader of that band, and so he had that connection there, and he hooked us up with Mortis from Europe, and he also had another connection. It flips me now. Oh, and we knew some of the guys from the Berserker, which is another really awesome Australian
incredible
brutal band. Yeah. So yeah, it just all worked out. We reached. Everyone said yes, and then we sent them all the songs. Said, which one do you want to do? Which ones do you want the stems for? And it all worked out. But yeah, it was something. Definitely, I also do a bit of DJing on the side, so I do love the electronic side of things as well. So it was really good to dip into that and get some songs out there that might get played at some of those clubs, and you go, "Oh, that's my band," but they're dancing to it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, and it's hard to pick which questions I'm going to ask first, but definitely it's I'm in a very low level industrial band, but it's funny there's a guy up in who would definitely love your stuff, Josh, who does a Gothic program up at Brisbane, and he plays. You probably heard of him, yeah, and he.
Yeah. Is it Josh G? Oh, it starts with the G, the second name, doesn't it? Yeah, I've been on his radio show. Yeah, he's played us a few times. He's great. Good supporter. Yeah,
good dude. And I was going to say we were definitely more on the more riffy kind of metal stuff, but we got a remix stuff, and exactly, I think that's a good crossover, and for the industrial stuff, because I'm jumping ahead with my questions, because it's it's certainly a tricky thing with industrial, isn't it? Because there's the dancey kind of stuff, and then there's also the kind of rocky stuff, and then there's the middle ground, which is almost kind of new metal and everything in between.
Yeah.
Because when you go on some of the forums, it's like, oh no, it should have, heavier beats and more on the gothic end. And then other people go, no, I don't like the synths in it, which is, I'm like the soft tacos and the whatever. Why can't we have both? I love all that stuff, like you said, the clubby stuff, and those remixes, and that's where, that's where I think that album worked perfectly for you, and it's got, it's a funny genre, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, mate. It's something that it's been a blessing and a curse, I guess, that kind of niche of a niche kind of genre. I think it's, like you kind of touched on it before, where we're a bit too gothy and synthy for the extreme metal guys, but then we're too riffy and heavy for the gothy club guys. You know what I mean? So we can never really fit into one, which we love, and that's who we are. We love all different kinds of stuff. But I mean, I can't even tell you how many times people we've worked with in the industry have gone, God, can we just pigeonhole you? Like, wouldn't it be easy if we could just market you as this? You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, but it's hard because we're just so many different things, and it doesn't really, So I know what you're saying is, definitely, especially with the industrial. And there's a lot of things about this is industrial, this isn't industrial. You've been on the forums and all that, and I love it all. And when I think of industrial, I come from that background. I'm frontline assembly, ministry, Godflesh, all the way through to, and then as you say, it kind of got that. I don't know if it got tarnished, but it got meant, it was the Marilyn Mansons and all the bands that came out around the new metal movement as well, which we dig as well. But I mean, it kind of changed what it was, and it kind of, maybe some people saw it in a different light to what it originally was. So, it's a really interesting subgenre, isn't it? It can has really polarizing kind of,
I mean, even when you look, it's funny, like, Marilyn Manson, it's so varied, even though the guy's obviously a bit of a twat as it's come out over time. But like a lot of those people, but look at Nine Inch Nails, they had some stuff that were like really quite poppy, catchy stuff, and then, they've gone really weird. He does like ambient stuff and really dark stuff. And that's definitely what I want to, touch on soon about the EP and probably all your releases. There's bits where it's almost the catchiness of new metal, because you've got the hooks, and definitely, which you will love, hopefully your head won't explode, the vocal work, because it's like those, the harmonies and the melodic stuff, almost like what you hear in clubs, and then also that era of new metal, such catchy stuff, but then you've got huge riffs, so it's there's a lot of variety in there.
Yeah, and I think that kind of speaks to we're all similar yet different individuals in the band, and there's definitely one guy, Matt, the bass player. He's a big new metal head through and through, and he'll tell you that to your face. He's not ashamed of that. And then Wade's more into a bit more of that orchestral, symphonic kind of extreme metal, and then obviously, I love the more industrial, soundscapey kind of stuff. Like I'm talking, old school Throbbing Gristle and Nurse with Wound, like the real kind of, I go to these against, sometimes I put music on, the guys go, is that your washing machine? Like, what do you listen to, man? It's like, I just listen to a lot of noise as well. But and that all comes together, and you've touched on a few of those, and I think that comes out thankfully in a way that makes sense, and it's not just all over the shop, but no, it's really quite, clear in there. And I even though you don't sound like them, but the band that sounds, or the parallels are probably the Amenta. They really, your band reminds me of that. And they're, as we know, one of the most amazing bands that they can have. Absolutely.
Amazingly catchy songs, and then some just really fucked up stuff as well, like really dark stuff. And they've also got the imagery, but they're so into what they do, and I like, that's pretty rare. And And like a little bit backtracking what we said before, you can't define it, you know?
Yeah, well, I'm good friends with a couple of the guys, mainly Eric in that band. I'll give you a funny story.
Yeah.
Just before I started this band, our last or we started that. I was working with the guys. When they were in between singers. I was singing on there's a couple of demos out there of the Amenta with me on it. So there
Wow.
was a chat. I was almost the singer in Amenta, my claim to fame. But that didn't turn out. And you know they've got an amazing singer now, and the band is phenomenal. But absolutely love those guys. So to mention in the same breath as that's great, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I think look, they're really clever. Like it all the things we've discussed, it touches on the extreme stuff, but then also a bit of the dance and a bit of the catchy stuff. So, you know, it ticks a few boxes. Let's definitely get into the EP. I wanted to so the previous EP and this one were recorded around the same time. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was. We did all 10. Oh, I might have a couple left over, but there was definitely 10 main songs that we did, and we're all at the same time, written, recorded, produced, all that, mastered. Um, and it was planned to do two EPs. We said, look, you know, as is the trend at the time, and it is still now. A lot of bands are doing, you know, more bite-size kind of releases. So EPs and even just singles, a lot of them too. So we wanted to really get the most out of its material because unfortunately the attention span of the current audience in you know for music it can be quite iffy. They'll listen to one song and no one really listens to a full album anymore. No, even though we do, but
Yeah.
your general population. But yeah, so we decided to split it in two, get a bit more legs out of the material, I guess. But we never really intended for such a gap, mate, because I think you're probably aware of what happened. We
Yeah.
released the first one, and then the world shut down for a couple of years.
Yeah, a couple of things going on in between. But I what I think is interesting about that is I think it's funny if they were recorded all around the same time, but they're quite different. Like I think the splitting between the five on either side is really different. Whereas I think, yeah, the other five are almost a bit more not dramatic. I'd say dramatic, where this is more grim. You know what I mean? Like, but really energetic. You know, like
Yeah.
it's a funny split. Like you wouldn't necessarily think they were recorded at the same time.
Yeah, well, we did put a lot of thought into what the two halves would look like. So hopefully obviously that's come across there. And they're two sides to the same coin, so to speak. And it is one big story. And but like you said, it's so funny because we recorded it before everything happened, and so many people have come to me in interviews and just people I know saying, "Oh, you can tell that song's about, they think it's written about what we were going through at the
Yeah.
time, but it's like, no, it wasn't. We're just grim all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's ironic, but you can kind of, apply those to the time we were going through and what we're coming out of. And some of the titles, like, long time coming, never coming back. That's what it all felt like at the time. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's a prophetic in a way.
That's what you aim for, isn't it? Apocalyptic, like
Yeah. Well, hey, the universe came through for us and gave us the ultimate setting for it.
that's it.
So, yeah.
So over the two EPs, what are some of the themes in there? And I mean, you can kind of touch on the lyrics as much as you want to as well. I mean, we'll go through track by track in a second, but what are some of the themes, across that? Is there a difference between the two EPs, or there's a couple of themes?
I think the major themes across the whole record was at the time when we were writing it, where there was a lot of frustrations with things that weren't, I guess things happening in the world at the time. There's, I guess, the one that mostly directly relates to that is "Slay" for me, which is kind of a reflection. At the time, the sentimentality of everyone saying, my thoughts and prayers was the response to everything, like the 29th fucking school shooting or the 8th hate crime.
Yeah.
It was thoughts and prayers, my thoughts and prayers. And and that kind of pissed us off. And that's kind of a direct response to that. It's more like, I don't want you to pray for me. I want you to get up and do something effectual. You know what I mean? Something with some meaning behind it. So that was part of it. That's the closest we'll ever get to being a protest song or anything slightly political. We don't put that in any of our songs, but that was the that was one there that reflected that. But yeah, we're also going through some members at the time, so there's a couple of different lineups that are actually had input on this record. At the start anyway. And there was a lot of frustration there about, is this going to happen? Is this the end, of the band? But also that related into our songs, which are on a more macro level of like, is this the end of the world? Whereas introspectively, we might be thinking about ourselves, and we try and do that with all our music. There's a macro and a micro way you can look at it all, and use that how you will. In terms of the two sides of it, I think the first side's a bit like, what's going on? It's all going to shit. Is it ever going to get better? And then the second half's a bit more embracing that. It's like, hell yeah, bring on the apocalypse. Let's bless the fall. Let's rip it all down. You know what I mean? So it's kind of embracing that and then using it to your own advantage in a way. So I wouldn't say it's more upbeat, but it's it's a bit more. Yeah, just embracing that that kind of stuff that's going on rather than just woe is me. And as you know, probably from a couple of songs on, especially the opener, there's a bit more. We've incorporated a couple of different kind of vibes on there, which people call, they go, "Oh, that's like a party song." I'm like, "Yeah, party song if you're in fucking hell or something." Yeah, but that is the element to it. There is a bit more of a, not a joyous, but a hey, we're all going to hell. Let's do it. Let's have fun. Let's go down.
No. Look, it's certainly bursting at the seams. The last thing before I wanted to go into the tracks was, how was it working with D.W. Norton? I mean, incredible legend, his own bands and the records he's produced, speaks for itself. Like, how was that process?
Yeah, it was great. Another guy we reached out to, who we didn't really have any prior connection to, and we'd worked with him on a few things. I think back in the day, the band I was in before, he was putting out some compilations, and he grabbed us on one of those. So there's a slight connection there, but we really approached him and said, "Look, we know you're doing more mixing and producing now. Here's some of the stuff. Let me know what you think." And he was definitely interested, and really loved it. And he brought something even more so than Christian. He was more, I would say, of a hands-on producer. So some of these songs he chopped up and edited and put this here and extended a vocal here and dropped the band out here. And he's like, "This is going to be great live. This is where everyone's going to sing with you, man." You know what I mean? Like, he really knew how all those dynamics and all those things work, obviously from his years of doing it, you know what I mean? And doing it quite
100%.
successfully. So it was an awesome experience to work with DW. He put a lot of ideas on the table and ended up kind of co-producing it in a way, even though we didn't pay him any extra. So yeah,
it's a bit of a bonus. Like, the records he's done his own band, and he's done Mind Snare as well. So he's got that. He knows all about the guts and the live stuff. Now, was there do you think there was a bit of the last thing before we talk about the songs on the EP, do you think there was a bit of a pressure, because that last EP was like really critically acclaimed, like it went down, it was super popular, and that for a lot of reasons, very, very solid. So is there any pressure there? Or I suppose obviously there's a bit of a lag there, so.
Yeah, so that's always in the back of your mind, but I think the main difference for us with this release is we're doing this one totally independent. We had a label behind us on the first one, so I think we're just like, get it out there, do it yourself, see what happens kind of thing. And look, to be honest, there's a bit of like, Jesus Christ, let's just get it out there and get it done. Like, this has been in our back pocket for a couple of years now, so there's some conflicting, I guess, ways we're thinking about it. Obviously, ultimately, we're super excited to get it out there. That's because it has been so long. But in terms of what it's going to do, and in any kind of numbers or popularity, we'll see what happens. The most thing for us is just getting it out there and letting this story have its conclusion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's get into the EP. You talked a little bit earlier about the opener. Really, it did surprise me, I have to say. Hex Design, which drops on this Friday, which is tomorrow, I believe.
Tomorrow, yeah, mate.
Yeah, so really interesting use of slide guitar, but it also reminded me of Ministry, a little bit of not Jesus Built My Hot Rod, but a couple of songs around that era, but quirky, but then riffy, man. Like, yeah, kudos. What an opener. Like, you know.
Yeah, mate, we're so excited to drop that tomorrow because you guys have all got
Yeah.
listen to it before everyone else. But yeah, we're just excited because it is the most different track on the record and the most different track that we've put out for a while. And it's still us at the end of the day, like you said. It's still heavy and groovy and all that. But it's slight acoustic guitar. I don't know where that came from, but yeah, it's an interesting way to open it. Let's put it that way. But yeah, we're going to put it out tomorrow. And I'll give you an exclusive. We just filmed a video for it, so we're going to announce that in a couple of days, and that'll probably come out the week after as well.
Sweet.
So there'll be a visual component which will match the music, and let me say, it'll be like our funnest clip yet.
Wow, that's a quote I wouldn't have expected from your band, but
yeah. Well, fun if it's Halloween. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's good fun. Because I love how it's kind of almost a mix of Ministry and Pantera, because it's kind of got that southern groove, but it's super dynamic. Like, yeah.
You hit the nail on the head. So just two things about that statement. Our bass player who wrote the guts of this and came in with the idea, the demo was called Southern Trucker Song. So you hit that. That's what he was going for, and he definitely is a huge Pantera fan. So I think he'll be pretty stoked that you've cottoned onto that. So
yeah, no, it's a good track, a good opening out. Then it interestingly goes into Bless the Fall, which is, I think it's one of the heaviest tracks you've ever written. Like, it's it's so hectic. It's got the kind of 90s harmony, almost a bit of stadium rock stuff, but then it's so crushing. It's got that extreme metal vibe as well. So the transition was amazing.
Yeah, thanks. That's so. Now, talking about members, so that was Wade, the guitarist's baby, I guess. He brought that one to the table, and as I said before, he's into that more extreme end of things as well. So that's the one he's dying to play that live. So we haven't played that. Obviously, played that one live. So he thinks that's going to be a live banger, and I have to agree with him. That will kick off the things very well. Yeah.
And then the third track with your mate CJ, Still Breathing. I mean, I love there's so much in those 5 tracks. That's what I have to say. Like, and also the way that they kind of follow each other is really clever. Like, it's a lot of thought instead of this song. I call it industrial metalcore. Like,
nice.
It's so I hear I heard a bit of the backstory that you knew him previously, and I think you did some vocals, and then he repaid the favor. But wow, what a song, man!
Yeah, we another song that was written, recorded, mixed, mastered well before we even approached CJ. But then having that big gap that we had, we got some time to revisit the songs that we had in the can, and I reconnected with him over those years, and said, hey mate, I think I finally got a song that you'd suit. Do you want to pay me back that favor? And he said, all right. And he went to, we sent it to him, and he went in. He's got a guy that does his guests because he loves doing his guests. Re-recorded that, sent it through, and it did change a bit. So it never used to have that kind of call and response that he and I have in the verses.
Yeah.
So that came in there, and so it did actually change the song a bit. It wasn't just simply him just copying some bits that I was doing. It gave it a different vibe. And industrial metalcore, I actually said that phrase to the guys when that came through. So you're very on the money with where our headspace is with.
Thank you. That's good. That's what I do over listen to all the releases that I did get into it, which you'll find out before the release date. A fairly glowing review, you would say, for those reasons. And the next track is obviously what you spoke a little bit before, the first single, Slay for Me. It's got everything in it, man. It's got the the beats, it's got the sample, it's catchy, fantastic video as well. And you touched on the lyric kind of content before. A little bit what we said before. It's clubby, but it's rocky, but it's great song, man. Like really, really solid. Like it's
I guess that's our most kind of rocky one. I guess it's got that kind of sing along chorus, but then it's got some that like a random trip hop section in the middle with all samples from movies and stuff. Like we just had to do it. So you think you might figure the song out, and then it goes that way. You know what I mean? So yeah, and then the video clip, nice you touched on that. We work with the Blackley brothers from Her Name Is Murder Productions, who we've done a couple with now. They're super pro. They've worked with everyone from Sepultura to Red Hook, local band.
Wow.
So they've done a lot of cool stuff, and they were good friends with them. Now we've kind of built that kind of trust, I guess, artistic trust in knowing what they want to do, and they just did this full on, David Lynchian kind of Mad Max inspired fever dream. That's what he called it.
Great description. That's how I'd describe it. Yeah, it was really, it's really good you're working with those people. I definitely want to touch on the art and the music stuff later on because that's a fantastic collaboration. It's really big. And then talk about tangential turns. The last track, that's atmospheric. It's electronica. It's noise. It's everything. So to the waves, I believe, is the translation.
Correct. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So that is the translation. Yeah. Someone asked, I did another one the other day, and they thought it was French or something. I was like, "What are you talking about?" Anyway, we knew that had to be the closer for the record. So even if we were going to do it as a full album, that would have been the last song on there. And yeah, again, another one we work that I think Wade really worked closely on with that one. He's into that, really into that kind of cinematic, atmospheric kind of vibe. Well, we all are, but he's got all the toys, and so we worked all that. We went up to his studio and worked on that one. We probably did that one more so ourselves than any of the others. We recorded that one pretty much all ourselves in our own studios, and just working with effects and samples and vocal effects and things like that. So hopefully it does end it out on a kind of atmospheric, almost noisy kind of way, like you said.
It's a good, as I said, the transition and the tracking of the tracks is really good. I think the sequence of the tracks is really clever, which is good because it shows it's a little bit more thought into it rather than all over the place. And you just touched on then about, some of the, the elements on it. So how involved is the current lineup in the process, like the composition? Because there's samples, there's synth tracks in it. There's a lot of stuff. So is everyone pretty involved? Is it like the creative process? Is it pretty kind of equal? Because it certainly seems that way from what you've sort of told me so far.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. We're all in that. Like as I said, someone might come in with the bones of a song, go, "This is the riff, this is the idea," but no song ever ends up like that. When you bring it to this band, we are all put our 2, 3, 4, 5 cents in, and even with the samples, like I said, we spent a couple of weekends at Wade's. Over a few months actually, just getting in a room together, picking samples, placements, and playing with them and working all that kind of stuff out. So everyone's so involved in every element of it, and with the songwriting in particular, I think that comes across with those melding of genres that you've mentioned, all the different ones it touches on, and that does definitely reflect all the individuals in this band as well. Yeah,
I mean, it's getting all those flavors, and I think also as a singer, because I'm useless to play anything, you've got to definitely kind of, voice your opinion there, and you've got to be involved in as much as possible. Yeah. Apart from singing, it's never just singing, but particularly for you, Now, I'm curious.
Well, I'm a huge. Sorry.
I'll go.
I was just going to say, I'm the huge movie nerd. I've got this massive collection, mainly horror and sci-fi. So I'm definitely very involved with the samples, like some of those movie samples in there from like I think we use Society a lot in Slay for me. Yeah, that's definitely from my other skill other than just singing. It's finding cool samples.
That's a yeah, that's a good skill. How did and I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I might have to hit it into the next thing if that's okay,
Yep.
if you've got time.
Yep.
Because it's going to run out in about 3 minutes. How did you first get into music? I'm curious about that because you're obviously, super into it to have a band of such. It's not, play three chords and rock and roll. It's so much more to it. So, how did you first
Yeah.
get into music?
So first, it's definitely was in high school. I remember, when you're around 15, 16 and you're starting to go out and there was like a youth center in town and there was like a bands would play covers, of what was it around the time, Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that. And you'd go and get in your first mosh pit and it was just, have your first beer and there's girls there and all that kind of stuff. And that really hits you. You go, wow, this is great. I want to be those guys. You know what I mean? Like, this is so much fun. Why don't we just do it ourselves? So yeah, started a band in high school and similar to the band I'm in now, it was all over the shop. We were doing a Dark Throne black metal cover, a Deftones and a Cold Chamber, and then a Frenzal Rom song. You know what I mean? Like our band was just anything a 15-year-old was listening to that was alternative at the time. You know what I mean? So I guess maybe that's where my eclectic nature stems from as well, which I've continued.
That's like a music festival band. It's kind of Big Day Out meets Soundwave, like it's
Well, I just remember back then, this is like the 90s. I felt like there was there wasn't as much division. It was kind of all just alternative music, you know what I mean? Whether it was a metal band, a punk band, or a grunge band, we all just liked it because it was not the mainstream, you know what I mean? Or we thought it was alternative. Whereas now I find it so much more divided.
yeah, no. I think divisive is a good word because it's really, there's a lot of lines and barriers between you're this, you sit there, that's why mixed bills work so well. That's some of the best gigs you go to. It's like, the variation is amazing, like in the mixed crowds, it just works, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's I'm just might because it's got less than a minute. Trying to work out what to do. I think I go out and then go back in.
I think so. Do you need to?
I'm going to hit end and then.
Well, maybe does it pop you up with a thing saying, "Do you want to extend at the end or not?"
I think it asked me to upgrade, but I'm.
Oh no, not doing that.
No.
So what? Do we just use the same link again, or?
I think so. So I'll hit end and then we'll rejoin. Is that cool?
Yeah, man. No worries. All right.
I'll hit end now. All right, so we're back. We had a bit of a toilet break there, thanks to Zoom.
Yep.
So yeah, you were talking a little bit about how you got into music, and so what were some of your gateway bands like in the transition to probably? So you talked a little bit before about high school bands, and like a lot of us get into everything from Smashing Pumpkins, Slipknot, Frenzal Rom. So where was the kind of transition into the industrial or even extreme stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, around that when I was that age, to teenager, getting into it, I think there was grunge was still really big, but then you had the start of new metal coming around as well. But then I was also into a lot of hardcore. Like I used to rock an agnostic front shirt to school, and everyone was like, "What? Are you a skinhead?" And I'm like, "No, you know what I mean?" Like it was So I was really into hardcore as well. So and that was and then that's why and then like metalcore started to happen, which was kind of blending these two musics that I was listening to already. More so, I was getting to like Earth Crisis and Turmoil
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff. So um I guess more so the industrial happened when I moved. So I grew up outside of the city, or in a more, well, somewhat, some say, country town, a few hours outside of a city. So it was when I moved back and went to university and back to the big smoke, I started getting taken out to, industrial and goth nightclubs, and that's when I really came into that kind of music, I guess, for the first time. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. And then, so did you're in some previous bands before your current great band. Was that, what was the difference between that band and, because I know that this band was formed from a few bands that kind of had dissolved and kind of broken up. So
Yeah, so the band I was in before this was called Anxiety Whispers, and we just played relentlessly during the 2000s, in anywhere and everywhere we could, and built up a bit of a name for ourselves. But it was more, I guess that was more, who would they call us? Australia's Coal Chamber. Someone did us in a review, so we were that kind of new metally, but really gothy, like way more makeup and the fishnets and the mesh tops and the chains and all that stuff. So that was that 2000s kind of era, I guess. But that's where we really got my chops and learned how the industry worked. And this is before, the internet was such a big thing. Like, people actually had to rock up to gigs and
yeah.
actually and find out bands that way. And there was, I think, a really healthy kind of live scene as well, which is very different today. But yeah, and then I met Matt, the bass player who's still in the band, and he'd been in a band that was really kind of almost on the rap metal kind of new metal side of things. They had a singer who was a rapper, and they kind of sounded a bit like Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt a kinship with him because I was watching that band and they looked all like that, and here he is with his big waist long dreads and his and a skirt on and makeup smeared. He looked like Twiggy from Manson, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I was like,
Excellent.
wow, I want that guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll just take that guy, you know what I mean? Yeah. So we've gone through a couple of changes over the years, but Matt and I are the two original guys. Yeah.
How did so over that time, how did your vocal style kind of change? Because I mean, even from your own band releases, there's a lot of variation there, which is, of course, happens with progression, and your skill builds up and you're doing, more gigs and those kind of things. So there's definitely a lot of changes you can hear.
Yeah, I guess when you start out, you just want to, for me, I know I was just yelling as much as I could. It was all about the energy and the aggression, which is still there. But I've always been open to trying different things, and I'd always add some weird things in, whether it's like, speaking in tongues in a song or something, or adding I want to add something a bit weird in there. I've always been open to, a bit of clean singing in there as well. But I think for me, my big in musical influence, especially in terms of vocally, and probably my favorite artist is Mike Patton. And as you'd know, he does it all. You know what I mean? So he can do the heavy extreme vocals. He could do the crooning and the clean singing and the opera. He can do it all. So that's always been my kind of go-to, or my idol, inspiration, or whatever. So that's why I kind of always trying to add interesting things in there, especially the random ones that some would say is just weird noises, and I'm like, no, no.
It's being inventive and creative, man. I mean,
That's right.
he's the top of it. You've seen so many of his bands. Like, just he's the master. And even when I think some recent stuff he did, and they did hardcore covers and stuff. That, well, I don't know if it was Bungle or just amazing. But yeah, as you said, he can do the operatic stuff, extreme
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I think I've seen him about 14 or 15 times in different scenario live settings,
Yeah.
everything from doing full on Italian 50s pop songs to to some extreme noise kind of stuff. Like he's done it all.
He covers everything. It's like, and he was like, the funny thing was, like, that initial wave of Faith No More was very catchy, kind of almost pop songs. You know what I mean? Like the real thing and all that. It was amazing, like around that time. But it's just, but the variation, yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely something to aspire to.
Well, the thing is, when I first got onto him, it was actually Mr. Bungle, which I first got into, and I wasn't really into Faith No More because the first I'd ever heard of them was on like one of my little sister's hot hits compilations, and I'm like, nah, that's crap. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, but then I got really into this band called Mr. Bungle, and they're like, that's the guy who's in Faith No More too. I'm like, what? And I was like, oh, so I was more. Yeah, so I was a late bloomer, I guess, to the whole Faith No More thing, and I obviously love him now. But that was kind of yeah. I thought it was just this weird, eccentric genius from Mr. Bungle.
Yeah, no, it's fan. Yeah, it's a good inspiration. So we touched on it a little bit before, and definitely you've got some amazing videos, but I definitely want to talk about the interaction of the art and the music. I mean, like the Holy Ones, 10,000 Headless Horses, and most of your videos, to be honest, it definitely got that cinematic stuff, the crossover, which I think is really good because some people kind of forget that. But in the artwork, everything it follows through, which is really good. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, the band's made a big effort, I think, over that time, which is appreciated, man.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's always been important for us to have that full kind of like all of it is important to us. Let's put it that way. So obviously, even in a live setting, like these guys, they've got a bit of makeup on and they've got a bit of theatrical stuff on stage. But we wanted to move that through also to we put that effort into the artwork and that effort into the visual aspect in the videos as well. And I think said it before, but that 10,000 Headless Horses was our first one, and we did that with the Her Name Is Murder guys, the Blackley brothers, and that was just when they were starting out. And then they went on and did Thy Art Is Murder and Sepultura and a couple other big bands. But we were there from the start, and I think that's why we're still such good friends with them. But from that straight away, we had proper production values, so to speak. We had things on fire, we had safety people, we had all that kind of but then again, now as we've moved through some of those ones you mentioned, like the Holy Ones, that's we made that one ourselves. So Wade actually pretty much put that all together from
wow.
We did we all filmed a little bit of ourselves at home on our phones because mind you, this is at the start of the lockdowns and everything.
Yeah.
So we filmed ourselves. I remember I did my scenes in my car park basement, and you put enough filters on something, and it looks industrial. It's all industrial then.
Yeah,
And
that's it.
and then he got some found footage and some stock stuff, and we just built it out that way. So we've done everything from working with proper big production teams to literally just making it ourselves in our car parks. But always trying to make sure there's that level of a certain standard, I guess, of quality and of what we want it to say. Yeah, so again, we're stepping that up again with, I say, there's a new one coming out. Well, we're going to announce next week. It's going to be the video for Hex Design, which is again something a bit different for us.
Excellent, the fun one. We'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Ministry meets Pantera.
that's it.
Now, I also wanted to ask, so these associations with all these bands, you kind of pinch yourself sometimes about, like the people you've worked with and collaborated with. Yeah, pretty amazing, really. Like that's far and few between for a lot of bands. It's only what you would dream of.
Oh, mate, to be honest, and I was thinking about this the other day, it's probably the biggest thing that I'll look back on all this. Like, let's be honest. The music hasn't made me $1 million, but it's made me a million awesome memories. You know what I mean? And those are the things that are the biggest things I remember. All these connections and experiences and opportunities that we've had. And that's what you do it for ultimately. You know what I mean? Like we've all still got day jobs. Like the band isn't, as we know how it is, especially as a local Australian band. So those things are super important, and yeah, I do find myself pinching myself, or just looking back, going, you know what, you should be really, humbled about that, and pretty happy with what you've done. You know what I mean? In some people's eyes, you're not you're not Metallica, but but you've had awesome stuff that a lot of bands would probably dream of. You know what I mean? So really important to
Exactly. Yeah.
keep that in
In
perspective. Yeah,
perspective, 100%.
yeah.
So what's coming next, and because I would imagine a little bit what you touched on earlier. Obviously the EPs were recorded a while. I would imagine you've got some recording ideas or that under your hat. I would imagine.
Yeah, so that they asked, yeah, definitely on their way there. There's a lot of ideas in there. I don't know. Well, especially over lockdowns and everything, I think a lot of bands started to work remotely. But we'd already kind of been doing that because our guitarist Wade actually lives in Brisbane and we're based in Sydney, so there is a bit
Ah,
of a yeah. So we can't just quickly jump in a room together. So we kind of got our heads around how to do things remotely and online using different, programs, etc. Even before everyone else, we were all forced to do it that way. So we lucky we had that. So yeah, there's like there's the wonderful folder where everyone's put their riffs in, all their
yeah.
ideas, and we're sharing them around. So yeah, that kind of bubbling is happening. There's even some new instruments have been bought. Some may say with
Wow.
a few more strings on them. So the sound may have a change again in its core sound due to that as well. So yeah, a lot of new things happening.
So do you jam in between? Because I remember there was a video with the in-ear things, which are always super interesting, which I think I've seen that on Instagram or something like that. So
Yeah.
do you jam remotely as well, or
No, so we haven't gotten to that level. We have looked at tech that would do that, but it's still just a bit weird, isn't it? But
yeah.
but no, we try and regularly. Wade comes down, especially if we've got a bunch of show or even a show or a tour lined up. He'll come down a couple of times before then, and we'll just do a lockout at our local studio. They'll let us put all the gear in there for a whole weekend, so we can just jam and make the most of it. We've got to try and make the most of it when he comes down because it can be expensive flying back and forward. So he'll come down. We'll do a weekend lockout and then when it comes to writing, we often just we'll either fly up to him or he'll come down here and we'll just do it, in a room because you don't we write a lot on with you can just program some drums and throw some riffs together, I guess. Yeah, so it's an interesting way to work. I know, but I do know more and more bands now that have that situation. I've known some bands with members in different countries and they just get together, before the tour or whatnot and get nice and tight before then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the new tech. So I see you've jumped on with Metal Ruse for the booking agent. So that's pretty exciting. So what can you talk about? Anything you've got coming up? Obviously, is there a tour coming up, or what's coming up next?
Yeah, so well, we're meeting with them tomorrow to nut a few things out, but then we've got definitely one show announced and happening, and that's Friday, November 3rd at the Burdekin in Sydney. It's a little bit of it's a split level kind of it's a full on almost like a mini festival club event. So there's DJs on one level, bands on another level. There's markets, there's stalls, there's entertainers. It's the weekend, I think Halloween falls like on a midweek this year, so this is kind of that weekend after
Yeah,
that. So it's kind of also a Halloween event. It's called Invoke, and it's got some really cool bands on it.
yeah, it looks
Um,
solid, man. It looks solid. I've seen that. That looks like
yeah,
a huge event.
so we're pretty excited for that, and that's announced and going ahead. We did have a bit of a run, a New South Wales run with a bunch of shows which were going to happen in October. We're just waiting on, as I said at the start, the prognosis go ahead, I guess, for
Yeah, of
Wade with the
course.
bloody broken elbows. So it may be cutting it too close. So we haven't announced those yet because we don't want to announce them and then cancel them. So we're going to have to make a call on that soon. But what I can say is, yep, November's locked in. And I'm sure that those shows, if they have to be moved, that they'll probably be moved around at the end of the year as well. So more shows to come.
Is there? So you think there's some interstate like Melbourne? Because I think the last time I seen you was maybe 2017, maybe at the Workers Club or something. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
remember that show. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so we haven't booked anything out of state yet.
yeah,
We
yeah.
we
Of
did
course.
look at it in September and we're looking at doing something, September, October, but it's there's, you know, what's happening at the moment. There's such a glut of internationals
There
coming
is,
out. It's
yeah.
crazy because, you know, now they will, you know what I mean? Because the gates are open again, and that's awesome. But it is, you know, I talk to a lot of people in the industry, and they're like, yeah, that some of the public's getting a bit of a hangover or running out of money, basically, or it's kind of. I've got 6 big internationals I've got to pay $100 a ticket for, and I can't, and you know, and local shows are kind of not, they're not going to go to that local show, I guess. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of clashes going on, and then
100%.
a lot of local venues are booked out for the rest of the year because it's same for local bands. Now we can show, let's do it. They've all booked out, so it's been a logistical nightmare, really, in that sense. So we are definitely going to do it though, and the whole we love doing the East Coast, and we do that as often as we can. So you know, hopefully we can jump on something, maybe something bigger that takes us around with a band. You know, maybe we could jump on one of those internationals and do Australia. You know what I mean? So we've always got, especially Michael at Metal Ruse, we've got him on the hunt. So
Yeah, no,
see what
he's a good
happens.
dude. He's a good dude, and he books some good shows. So, yeah. My mates in Cunt Squad in Melbourne, they work with him a lot, and you know they've booked national tours, and you know they get contemplating overseas tours too. So he's a
Yeah.
hard grafting dude, which is good. So that's excellent. Yeah. Any final messages or thoughts? Because yeah, you've it's all happening now. It's good that the kind of momentum's building, and you know, in a couple of weeks, I think is it the 26th when the EP drops, 25th or 26th?
22nd, sorry, 22nd.
22nd, yes.
Friday the 22nd. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so tomorrow, which will be Friday the 8th, we've got Hex Design dropping as our next single, and that's going to be on all streaming services everywhere. So check that one out. As I said, there's an announcement coming in the next few days about a visual component to that, and that will have a time and date for that. And then, yeah, the 22nd is the EP. So anyone who's watching this who likes the sound of it, we have pre-orders open. It's going to come with an exclusive T-shirt with the art on it, and a physical copy of the CD with the big, you know, glossy 8-page booklet and the lyrics. And all that. So if you're still into that kind of stuff, it really helps the bands out to pop a pre-order in. Not only get the stuff, which is cool, but yeah, it really helps us move on and do other things with that as well. So if you can, pre-orders open now for As Within, So Without, coming out on Friday the 22nd.
Yeah, and it looks good. The T-shirt looks good too, and obviously I've heard the EP, and I would definitely recommend it's. For it, I think a T-shirt and a CD for I think $40, obviously plus postage.
Yep.
It's a bargain these days, so
Yep.
it's really
Yeah,
good.
we're literally doing it just for the cost, to be honest. We're not really making money off it. It's about us getting it out there. And we do have some people in our fan base who still love the physical media, so we always like to put that on for them. And we love it ourselves, so we want to copy ourselves. So
Excellent.
yeah, it'll be a limited run though. So if you are interested, do jump in, and those pre-orders really help out a lot.
I forgot one question. So, do you ever think you'll release the two EPs as a vinyl? Because that could be a good proposition.
Well, you've yet again, Mark. You've dived into our psyche and uncovered some secret. Like we actually
I'm
have.
like a
That's a
psych.
massive.
I'm like a metal punk psychiatrist. See?
Yeah, yeah. What's that? Is it Nardwar or what's his name? Is that
Yeah.
guy that? Yeah, and he always knows this stuff, and they're like, "How do you know that?" You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you like that, man. That's great. Yeah, no, that was actually that's an idea we have, and we've always thought about it. So if there's doing things like pre-ordering this pack will make that hopefully a reality and fund that for us. But yeah, it would be great to have the vinyl with the art on both sides. So EP1 and EP2, and it's just the one
Like a
album. We've even got
gatefold.
yeah,
Yeah.
gatefold, yeah. We've even got the track listing sorted out what it would be. So it would be slightly different if it was together. We've got a different
Oh
flow for it.
wow.
So we have thought that far ahead, but it's just, we'll see if there's any demand or if we can afford it.
100%. The other thing I'd say, because I was a couple of days ago when I was listening to the EP, I was playing video games, like a kind of dystopian game of shooting and robots. It works really well. So, like
Perfect.
any video programmers, I would say this is the band.
Oh, mate, that's great. We are so dying for that. So Wade and I, we're nerds. We stay up all night playing games with each other and shooting each other. So we'd love to have a song in a game. Like we've had our song in a few movies now, which is great. But the next step would be a game. Yeah, fantastic.
Which is funny because the guitarist in my band is developing a game. It's like a shoot 'em up game. I might have a word. That could
Hey!
be-
This is how all these things happen. You
It
know,
does,
someone, you
mate,
talk to
100%.
someone, and then it all comes together.
It's
So
like
that'd
a
be
modern
fantastic.
kind of Doom Wolfenstein and
Oh,
but
awesome.
modern.
Great.
But he's
Yeah,
but he's with that music as well. So yes, we definitely need to have a word about that. That could be
absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. It's
all
been
right,
great.
mate. Thanks for having a chat. I know it's two kind of longer chats, but yeah, it's definitely
All right.
worth it. And support the band, get the pre-orders in, and a lot of things are going to be happening, I'd say.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate it.
No worries, good chat, brother. All right, take care.